All right, so on this video, I kind of want to share my experience of dealing with ME/CFS and long COVID for the past roughly about 3 years, give or take, since June 2022. So if you're anything like me, you might have been dealing with long COVID for a short period of time, a long period of time. I guess we can only really go technically back about 5 years or so with long COVID. If you've been dealing with ME/CFS, probably a little bit longer than that, but I kind of wanted to make this YouTube channel and this video, again, to talk about those specific things. Again, if you're anything like me, you probably spent a good amount of time researching, trying to figure out what in the world is going on with your health. For me, it took probably about 2 years, give or take, to really figure out that what I was experiencing is long COVID. I'll kind of share a little bit about my background. Hopefully, you can relate. Maybe I can share some helpful pieces of advice. So I should say this is kind of my first official YouTube channel. I've never done the whole YouTube thing before. In fact, I'm definitely a introverted person. Don't really like to be on camera, but I thought, when you spend so much time, countless hours, what really feels like probably thousands of hours dealing with something with a health condition, it almost feels like the only thing you can do is sort of try and give back to other people that are dealing with it. Now, I definitely should say, I am nowhere near where I want to be health-wise. On a capacity percentage, I typically will say I'm about 30% of what I used to be pre-ME/CFS, pre-long COVID, to give you an idea. So I am definitely nowhere near where I want to be. I'm also not a medical professional, so I definitely can't give any sort of medical advice. So anything I kind of share or talk about on this video or future videos, just please know that I'm not a medical professional. And definitely always seek counsel from your doctor or any sort of medical professional. So again, my name is Colin, and to kind of give you a background on my health history, at least at the time of this video, I'm 30 years old, but rewind back to when I was 15, went through a little bit of health issues. I kind of ballooned up in weight. I was an athletic person, played a whole bunch of sports. Ended up kind of ballooning up in weight. I had really bad joint issues. My hair was falling out. I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me at that time with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. So got put on medication. Shortly after that, pretty much once I graduated high school, I really developed a passion for health because, when you get diagnosed with an autoimmune condition at 15, it's kind of like it's kind of a whirlwind. I didn't have any friends that were, at least I wasn't aware of, that were diagnosed with any sort of chronic health condition. So it's kind of a shot in the stomach, so to speak. So sorry about my phone here. And so I really went down the rabbit hole to try to figure out, again, what in the world is going on. So I kind of stumbled upon different podcasts and different really, helpful pieces of information. I learned about kind of the paleo diet. So again, if you're watching this video, maybe some of these things are new to you. Maybe some of these things are things you've tried. And I also need to say, things that work for me may not work for you, and so on and so forth. I definitely know for sure from my experience, there's been so much experimenting, and when you research and you see other people find success with certain treatments, and you try it out and it doesn't work for you, and vice versa. So I should mention that. But anyway, for me, at that time, I was around 18 or 19. After the initial diagnosis, I found the paleo diet. I learned about, at that time, removing gluten and dairy from my diet, and that helped immensely, really. I mean, that was a complete game changer for me and my health at that time. I was taking thyroid medication, I still do, just because with Hashimoto's, when you have a certain level of destruction to the thyroid tissue, your body just has no way to produce adequate thyroid hormone if the tissue's been destroyed enough. And in my case, it had been, so I have to take medication. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't if I didn't have to. But anyway, despite taking medication, making those dietary changes was a game changer. I noticed a huge difference in my health, and that lasted pretty much until I got basically developed long COVID. And so for me, like most folks, I got COVID pretty much in the first round of when the infection was sort of televised and publicized. So that was probably late 2019, early 2020. Can't remember, somewhere in that time frame. But pretty much like the first wave or so, I believe I had COVID. Now, to be fair, I never actually tested at that time, but it lasted about a week. It was pretty brutal. I was on the couch pretty much the entire time. So technically, it could have been something else, but more than likely, it was probably COVID. It had all the symptoms. It was right when that was sort of released and people were getting infected. So That's my guess. Not again, technically it could have been something else, but my assumption it was COVID. So after that infection, again, it lasted about a week. I seemed to recover, bounce back. I was actively working out shortly after and feeling pretty good. Didn't really notice a huge difference. So maybe about a year or so later, and keep in mind, like I'm definitely pretty brain fogged. If you're dealing with ME/CFS or long COVID, you might kind of have this experience of being relatively brain fogged. So a lot of these time frames might not be 100% exact, but it's relatively close. So I got infected again with COVID and tested positive that go around. Wasn't a great experience, but I got over it. And then fast forward to 2022 in June, I was at a big conference. It was a business conference. I should mention as well, not that this is super important, but you can just to talk about how long COVID, ME/CFS can definitely affect your life. I was very entrepreneurial. I still am prior to long COVID, and was kind of go. Always had things going on. Had different projects, different partnerships. Was part of a bunch of different sort of business mastermind groups, and just loved business, loved entrepreneurship. Kind of just encompassed my entire life outside of family and faith and things of that nature. But so I was at a big business conference. I think there were it wasn't huge, but there was about maybe 300 people there at kind of a hotel conference environment, and somehow got it from shaking hands with somebody or talking to somebody. And I just remember that last infection was really, really brutal. My heart was racing, and even my feet discoloration. So I should give you an example too. After I got the second infection, I noticed that although my mental fog, I didn't really have any brain fog, I didn't have any fatigue issues for the most part. I did notice that my circulatory system seemed to be affected. And in fact, there was one day I was sitting outside with my wife, and I lived in an apartment at that time, and I was looking down at my feet, and I started to notice, man, my feet look super interesting. They were kind of almost reddish purple, and they almost had sort of like a sheen to it, almost like an alligator skin, is kind of like the description I can give to what my foot looked like. And it was really strange. I kind of freaked out a little bit, took a bunch of photos. I showed my wife, and I was just honestly really confused. I had no idea what in the world was going on, why my feet were so discolored. But that kind of would kind of come and go. It wasn't completely constant, but it was something I noticed. And then again, fast forward to the last infection in 2022, it really, like I said, it really hit me hard. My heart rate was through the roof. I looked down at my feet, and they almost looked black. It was pretty gnarly. Fast forward to today, and I realized that a lot of those symptoms were due to dysautonomia, blood pooling in the feet. Again, if you're dealing with ME/CFS or long COVID, you might have kind of the orthostatic intolerant symptoms. So post 2022, that's when really everything started to unravel. The cognitive decline started relatively quick, and it's kind of had a pretty serious progression since then. We're in 2025 now as of the recording of this video. So pretty much over those 3+ years, my cognitive kind of capacity went from, let's say, pre-COVID 100%, it went, within maybe 6 months to a year, it kind of started dripping down to maybe 75 to 80%, right? So I noticed a 20% reduction, so to speak. And then 2024, it really started to kind of snowball very, very hard, and probably brought me to maybe 60%, 55%. And then here in 2025, it's definitely gotten significantly worse. And you might even notice in this video, me talking, I might be stumbling over my words or just kind of rambling in some ways, but I would say now I'm sort of at the 30%, maybe 40% range, give or take. So definitely not a fun place to be in. And throughout this journey, I've done a whole bunch of different blood tests. And I should say, throughout this journey, there are some findings that I found. I know studies are coming out to show that there's different causes and maybe different possible treatments to kind of approach this stuff. And for me, I was sort of, once I realized it was long COVID, again, I started spending a lot of time and effort going down that rabbit hole, and then come to realize for a lot of us, I remember there was a study that came out. I can't remember what it was called, but essentially they kind of showed, and maybe there'll be another study that refutes this study, but at least at the time I looked at the study, it said maybe around 48% of people that have long COVID within 18 months will continue to have symptoms, and that would sort of maybe classify them into an ME/CFS category within kind of that framework of long COVID. So basically that is sort of kind of where I believe I'm at now, is dealing with ME/CFS. Now I know there's also a whole subtopic of people that have the conversation around like post-vaccine injury. I should mention I haven't had any vaccines, not necessarily for or against it, but I know there's a lot of folks who will say all of these symptoms are from the vaccine. But I know in my case, I am not vaccinated. I got infected by the actual virus, and it totally unraveled all of these systems for me. So what have I learned in the process? Well, I'll say a lot, but also I will say I also haven't had much success with a lot of things. So, but I should say there are some things that I have found. So what are some of those things? And of course, I need to shout out individuals I've learned from, whether I know them personally or not, and some of the things I've learned from them. One of the biggest things I found, of course, and I guess this should make sense, is a lot of these post-viral issues can create what you might call like long-term neuroinflammation. So again, I'm not a physician, I'm not a doctor. This is just kind of a layman's person that's dealing with a chronic illness in my understanding. But neuroinflammation, from my understanding, basically is in kind of what it sounds like, is having a large or good, or maybe not good, but a large amount of inflammation in the brain. And when your brain is inflamed, the neurons that normally send signals back and forth to each other in a pretty efficient manner, when the brain is inflamed, that whole process slows down. So the whole brain fog concept, at least part of it, can be due to this neuroinflammatory state. There's definitely lots of reasons for neuroinflammation. It's not, you don't always, from my understanding, develop neuroinflammation only from a post-viral illness. There's definitely other illnesses that can promote neuroinflammation. I mean, getting TBIs or concussions or strokes perhaps, or even stuff as simple as chronic blood sugar issues can create some level of neuroinflammation. And I think for ME/CFS, I remember seeing a video from somebody called, his name is Jared Younger. And if you want me to kind of link to any of that stuff below, just feel free to comment below. But I believe he's a researcher out of a university, I want to say in Alabama. I could be making up that part, I'm not 100% sure. But recently I believe they did a study, and they showed that in ME/CFS patients, and this is to the best of my knowledge, again, I might be missing some things, but they were able to show that there are specific regions of the brain that are really, really highly inflamed compared to folks that don't have ME/CFS. And so even things like the orthostatic intolerance, the dysautonomias, could be related to certain regions of the brain that have been really highly inflamed. So how do you treat it? Well, I guess that's the age-old question. I know there is lots of, or there's some studies, I believe, they're trying to do drug trials to figure out, are there certain drugs that, pharmaceuticals that can be used to help dampen and help lower neuroinflammation, which is interesting. That's great. One of the things for me that I've been using and trying is flavonoids. So flavonoids, I guess, are compounds found in fruits and vegetables. Things like curcumin, resveratrol, green tea extract, luteolin, apigenin, things of that nature. These might all be compounds that you've heard about before. But from my time, at least spending in research and experimenting for myself, there seems to be a good amount of literature that shows compounds like curcumin, apigenin, green tea extract, resveratrol, and a few others might have some impact when it comes to lowering neuroinflammation. So there's a curcumin product that I've been using that, again, keep in mind, I'm still around maybe 30 to 40% capacity. So this is not like, hey, this completely changed my life. I know for a lot of us, if we can just get a couple percentage points of improvement or have some amount of good days compared to bad days, that's a win. So for me, I've used a product called Longvita curcumin. And again, I have no affiliation, no financial incentive or motive to recommend this stuff. This is just things that I found to help. Longvita, so it's Longiv, or long, 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 Vida. So you can see my brain fog kicking in here. Longvita. And from my understanding, that's a form of curcumin that can readily cross the blood-brain barrier and maybe help to dampen some of that inflammation. So I've used that product before. I still use it. There's also another compound that our gut produces, which is called butyrate. Now, from my understanding, butyrate is a compound. It's a sort of an anti-inflammatory compound that I believe also crosses the blood-brain barrier, but it's produced when you're consuming some sort of fiber, whether it's from vegetables or supplemental form of fiber. As your gut, I guess, digests and ferments that fiber, from my understanding, that fiber then produces compounds called short-chain fatty acids, and one of those short-chain fatty acids is a compound called butyrate. And from my understanding, butyrate it could potentially is very impactful when it comes to neuroinflammation, when it comes to gut inflammation, when it comes to things of that nature. And you can actually supplement with butyric acid, and there's all different brands that provide that as an option. So that's been relatively helpful for me. The other thing I'll mention, there's so many things to talk about, and there's so many things that haven't worked, but one of the other couple things I'll mention is fish oil, so omega-3 fatty acids. For my brief look at kind of research and literature, there seems to be some benefit for taking DHA and EPA. I've been loading up on a lot of DHA, which DHA seems to help more on the neuron level in the brain, from my understanding, and kind of the memory and cognitive processing side. And the EPA also has some pretty high anti-inflammatory effects. I've been kind of trying to push as much of the DHA side of things as I can, and that's probably helped somewhat. And then lastly, I'll just mention, I'm just trying to brain dump as much as I can here for you, because I know, again, you have a lot probably going on. So the last thing I'll mention, at least for me, that's provided some level of benefit, is really trying to load up on antioxidants. So one of the major issues, from my understanding, with ME/CFS is being essentially in a really high level of oxidative stress pretty much most of the time, if not all the time. And one of the major things that'll happen is with ME/CFS and long COVID is, if you've tried to exercise before, if you're anything like me and used to love exercising, one of the biggest kryptonites for your health in regard to making you massively worse is doing exercise, right? So for some of you, you might still be able to exercise, and if that's the case, that is absolutely amazing. Continue to enjoy it as long as it doesn't kind of put you out. But for a lot of us, and one of the diagnostic criterias for ME/CFS is kind of what they call post-exertional malaise, which is absolutely brutal. If you've experienced that, and maybe you've been experiencing that for years and years, and so maybe that's a whole nother video I'll talk about. But exercise is one of the things that can push you into kind of post-exertional malaise quicker than probably anything else. And one of the reasons being, from my understanding, is that exercise acutely could produce a decent amount of free radicals in your body as kind of a byproduct of exercise. And then longer term, your body compensates by producing antioxidants to kind of make up for that, and that's sort of maybe where some of the benefit of exercise comes from, is this endogenous internal production of antioxidants to deal with that. Now, if you're chronically ill and your body's producing free radicals from exercise, and you don't really have a great compensatory system to deal with that, like your body's not able to deal with those free radicals and the oxidative stress by producing a high level of antioxidants, sometimes you just experience the free radicals, and that might push you into post-exertional malaise, and you're not really able to get out of that sort of vicious cycle. So one of the things that I've been experimenting with is just trying to take a really high level of antioxidants. So one of those nutrients, and there's a decent amount of literature for it. I don't necessarily know if there's a ton for ME/CFS and long COVID, but it's called N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor to glutathione. It helps your body to produce more glutathione. And glutathione, as you know, or you might know, is a lot of folks call it kind of like the master antioxidant in the body. And so taking things like NAC in high doses, vitamin C in high doses, and even glutathione directly, I found to be moderately beneficial. And the last thing I'll say, I'm just trying to talk about everything that's helped me in the past or currently, is actually using oxygen, supplemental oxygen. Now, I'm not using an oxygen tank. I'm actually using an oxygen concentrator, which is a machine that basically takes ambient air. And again, I'm not an expert at any of this, but basically it takes the ambient air, so that the everyday air that you're breathing, in your environment, and it super purifies it to essentially spit out, anywhere from like maybe, I believe it's 85% oxygen to 93 to maybe 97% oxygen, as opposed to, having 100% oxygen that you're breathing in. So for me, again, I pretty much lost the ability to exercise completely the past 2 years. Anything as simple as even doing a set of, let's say, 10 squats might put me into post-exertional malaise for a few days. What I have noticed is when I do supplemental oxygen, I have a little stationary bike next to me. If I sit on that stationary bike and I pedal really, really slow, I mean, it's a turtle's pace. And if I use the oxygen concentrator at the same time and just pedal really, really slowly, I found that's been a way for me to get some level of body movement in without necessarily crashing. Now, this is kind of a short-term experiment. This could totally backfire me in a couple months. But I found the supplemental oxygen through the oxygen concentrator to be helpful. And I'll also, even if I'm in a crash or I feel like I'm headed toward a crash for whatever reason, if I'm laying down and I take I do the supplemental oxygen, let's say while I'm watching TV or hanging out with my family, and I do it for an hour, let's say, I've noticed, at least subjectively, it seems like it helps shorten the total amount of time I'm in a crash. So I found that to be pretty helpful. Now, again, this is not medical advice. I'm not telling you what to do. But these are just certain things that I've found to be helpful. So again, just wanted to make this video to kind of share some things that have helped me. There's been a lot of things I've tried that haven't helped me, like hyperbaric oxygen. On paper, that is an amazing therapy, being able to get blood flow to the brain and getting blood flow all throughout the body. But for me, the pressure of the hyperbaric oxygen, for whatever reason, would put me into a crash, no matter how short or how little duration I used it for, which is ironic because using oxygen through the concentrator actually works wonderfully for me, and I don't have any bad side effects from it. So I've used beta blockers. I've tried a whole list of other drugs to help try and manage, the dysautonomia, the cognitive stuff. I've used like guanfacine, which is I guess off-label drug for blood pressure, but they've shown it to possibly have like beneficial cognitive effects for the brain. And a whole list of other things, antihistamines and things of that nature, that just didn't work great for me. So I kind of have found myself to be in a position right now of doing more diet, lifestyle, nutrition therapies to try and help. And again, like I mentioned earlier on, I am nowhere near where I used to be, but these are just some things that I found to help. So probably as we go forward and I create more videos, I'll try to get more specific on individual therapies. I like to also create videos where I'll sit down and actually go over maybe a recent study that was published and kind of high level talk about the findings, how it applies to ME/CFS and long COVID. But at this point, I totally know I'm rambling. This is my first video. I'll probably look back in a year from now and a couple of years from now and just absolutely cringe at how much I was rambling. But hopefully there'll be some improvement in a couple of years and I'll be able to share that with you. But again, just wanted to make this video to say hello. And again, know that you're not alone. This is definitely a relatively tough journey. I know for me, it's been absolutely brutal on me and my family, my wife. We have young kids at the time of this video, so it's definitely not easy. It's been really, really tough, but we are grateful we have family around us, friends around us. And I'd also like to extend for you as well. If you need prayer, I would love to pray for you. Feel free to drop a comment below. This may be not for everybody. Maybe this part of the video throws you off, throws you for a loop, which I totally understand. No problem at all. But if you do need prayer, drop a comment below. Know that I'll actually be praying for you 100%. It might not be every day, but definitely I will be praying for you. For me, that has been absolutely crucial. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point, so I look forward to kind of seeing you on the next video. If you have any ideas or you want me to cover anything that you think might be beneficial, or if you found anything that has worked for you for long COVID or ME/CFS, I'd love to hear about it. Just drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video.